Welcome to the Travel Like a Boss podcast, where we interview location-independent entrepreneurs that travel the world like a boss by being their own boss. Here's your host, Johnny FD.
Hey everyone, this is Johnny and welcome to Travel Like a Boss episode 261. Today I'm with Mr. Nomad Numbers all the way from Taiwan, is it?
That's correct.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, so I got excited when you reached out to me for two reasons. One is Taiwan has always been kind of an underrated digital nomad destination and even just a travel destination in Southeast Asia kind of overall. Everyone goes to Thailand, to Bali, and then maybe they'll go to like Vietnam or Cambodia or even Laos or something. But Taiwan is always kind of just off the radar and people want to go and they're just like, oh, next trip. Why do you think that is, by the way?
Well, actually, I might have fallen under that stereotype as well, because I didn't really know about Taiwan until really the pandemic hit. So for some background, we've been traveling for the past 2 years. So we were in Indonesia at that time. And then as the pandemic became global, we decided to come to Taiwan. But prior to that, I think my only understanding of Taiwan was was Taipei and, like the 101 Tower, which was the highest tower for a while. And that was pretty much it. So, it's not, I think it's not a place that is being really, really well promoted, even within the country itself. That being said, it has so much great things.
Yeah, definitely. So I definitely want to get into that. But I actually wanted to say, I actually had heard about you guys, maybe 1 or 2 years ago because of how transparent both of you are about all your numbers. I mean, so your blog is literally nomadnumbers.com and it's all about the breakdown. So if anyone is like me and you like getting nerdy about the financials of exactly how much, each destination costs, these guys, Mr. and Mrs. Nomad Numbers break it down just like to the dollar, to like the penny even sometimes, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason we did that is because we felt that traveling the world was going to be expensive. And then as we did some research, we actually realized that so we thought that traveling the world was going to be expensive. As we did some research on our side, we actually realized that it was far from what we thought it was going to be. Mrs. Nomad Numbers, which actually was American, thought it was going to be, Mrs. Nomad Number, who is American, thought that a full year of world travel was going to cost us up to like 100,000 of American dollars. And for me, being French and growing up in Europe, I knew it could not be that much. But then as we started digging into the numbers and traveling ourselves, we realized it was really, really a fraction of that cost. And that's what got us excited about the idea of, we should share those numbers with people, because you can be with all of those amazing places in the world for really, really a fraction of what your actually cost of living might be, especially if you are in a high cost of living area like we were. That's how prompted the idea of behind the blog. And I'm glad that you have been appreciating the level of details we've been sharing there.
Yeah, because there's so few people who actually take the time or are open enough to share the numbers. So I've been sharing my income reports and my expense reports for I think maybe 5 years now. And before me, there was only a few people doing it. And after me, I think a few people have done it kind of here and there, but they leave some things out. They're not so detailed, or they're like, it's not consistent. So I love seeing kind of the long-term numbers. And I really like your year-end wrap-ups. So I'm looking at the one for last year. It looks like you had started in, let's see, what was it from? Yeah, some Mexico in San Miguel de Allende.
The Allende, yeah.
Yeah, for an entire month for 2 people, your total costs, which I'm assuming is like, traveling and other things, was $2,025, and your cost of living only was $1,700, so $1,748. When you say total cost, is that like including like buying clothes or like plane tickets or anything, or what is that?
So so what we want to do, what we wanted to do for ourselves actually, and that's why we're starting tracking those clothes, is like, what would it cost if we like that country and we want to stay there for a full year? So what we do is basically we remove all of the costs that does not relate to living in that place. So it's mostly airfare,
What's the difference between the living only costs versus the total costs? I'm assuming the total cost includes things like airfare or maybe like buying clothes.
Yeah, so it has. So basically, what we want to do, we are looking as we started to travel. We wanted to identify what really be the true cost of living in a given location. So then, if we like that place, we want to stay for a year. We can project numbers which are relevant, as well as sharing that with other people. So remove everything which is not relevant to the location, which can be airfare, because if you come to Mexico from the US or versus from Europe, the airfare will be much different, as well as things like long-term expat insurance and those type of things. Travel gear as well is something we also try to remove from that location, because if we buy clothes, as you said, those are going to be things we are going to carry over through the entire year. So that's where the difference comes from.
Yeah, I like that. And I started doing that as well on my blog kind of recently. I've always kind of had a breakdown, but people had to add up the numbers themselves. And actually last month, people got really mad because the big number was I spent $7,500 last month here in Sri Lanka. And people were like, what? That's insane. Like how, and people, a lot of people don't bother reading the actual, numbers, or they kind of skip through to, they scroll down to the big number. But what it was I paid my parents property tax this year as kind of a gift, and they live in San Francisco. And then I had some other kind of one-time expenses. So in reality, I probably only spent less than half of that in actual, cost of living. And the other half was that one-time kind of off expense that other people aren't necessarily going to have. So, for me, I'm kind of like, what? The numbers are there. People can do the math themselves, but it is very helpful that you just kind of break it down, make it very simple for everyone.
Yeah, and I remember seeing your blog post and reading it, and it's pretty easy once you get to it to understand why there is a difference, and and those things happen. So why not? But yeah, the idea behind those living costs is that then it's easy to compare cities. At least we remove as much noise as we can from our expenses we are on that location. So that way we can. So now we've built that giant maps of all of the places we've been, and so we have a rough idea of how much it costs in each of those places.
Yeah, so I'm taking a look through it now, and just to kind of give people broad overview. So in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, cost of living only was $1,700 for two people. In Aruba, it was $2,700, so $1,000 more.
But this was Aruba, so kind of a top destination for honeymooners and something like this. So even though it was $1,000 more, we felt it was still way cheaper than people would probably spend $10,000 in 2 weeks in Aruba for their honeymoon. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think my sister went there for just a few weeks or something, and she spent way more than that per week. So really good job kind of keeping those costs down as a nomad. And I look and I see that you spent a lot of time in San Francisco and then in France, and the costs were really low. I'm assuming because you and your wife are from there, maybe you had
correct.
some combination. Yeah.
We didn't have to pay for the accommodation on those places.
Okay, nice. But places like, let's say, Portugal, 2,300, Lisbon for 3 weeks, less than 2,000, and then Chiang Mai, Thailand, 1,400 for 34 days, Koh Lanta, 1,090 for 24 days, and then
yeah. So in contrast with Aruba, I don't know if have you been to Koh Lanta?
Yeah, I lived there for a bit.
Yeah, so it's pretty nice. They have like some really nice beach, and the weather it's quite good. So actually, we do prefer it to Aruba, because the problem with Aruba was the food was imported and pretty bad. So then, for a fraction of that cost, you get to enjoy beach by yourself. We went there before the high season, so it was November timeframe. It was not too rainy. And yeah, just a wonderful place to be, with access to local produce and wonderful people. So yeah, not that expensive if you still want to live in a nice beach.
Yeah, what's funny, I think, about a lot of the more kind of popular places in the world that people have heard of, like a lot of places in, let's say, like the Virgin Islands or the Caribbeans, or even the kind of really popular places that people think of, right? Whether it's the Maldives or like St. Vincent or something, they're really expensive, and there's not really that much to do in a lot of those islands besides stay at a really fancy resort. And I've always wondered why people go there. And, you know, sometimes you go, even Hawaii, for example, super expensive. Most of the beaches are so crowded. And I'm thinking, I'm here in Koh Lanta or I'm here in, you know, Sri Lanka, and the beaches are just as nice, but there's, you know, nobody here. You know, you can sometimes have a whole beach to yourself, and the price is a third of the price. Do you think it's just because they're not as famous, you know, or maybe they're a little bit further, so they're not as easy to get to from places like the US, that people just don't go?
I think it's the lifestyle. I think for us we have time on our side, so we can spend a month in a place that someone probably would think to spend 2 or 3 days. And also the fact that people are prioritizing. There is that time money paradox that we kind of stumble upon when most people that do work because they want a lot of money, so they say, oh, I need okay, I'm just going to do a side detour to go through this. I think it will make sense and edit it out. But yeah, so a lot of people said, oh, I need to make money, so I'm just going to go to work. So because I go to work, then I don't have as much time as I want to do other things. So I'm going to start outsourcing my life because I'm getting that money, right? So they are going to start buying food and doing their delivery, food delivery and all of those services and stuff. And then because they want more money, because they need to pay for those things now, they have less and less time for themselves. So you might see and visualize that kind of vicious circle. So then when for those people go on vacation, they might just have 1 week, right? So they might pick Koh Lanta, but if they are going, and they're not going to stay 1 week in the location, so they're going to have to spend much more money, and they might sometimes go in also high season and all of those things. For us, because we see things the other way around, because we think that time is, instead of being scarce, it's abundant for us, then we need less money, as surprisingly as it can sound, because we have time to cook our food, we have time to plan our trip, we have the time to decide when we want to go, and so on. So at the end of the day, if you move away from that time scarcity mindset and move to that time abundant mindset, then you need less money to do things, and you ultimately appreciate life much more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when I had a corporate job,
I think,
you know, it was exactly like that, where I didn't have the time to, you know, make my own coffee or, you know, or cook dinner. So I would, you know, stop by Starbucks or stop by a coffee shop, and then I would get Uber Eats delivery, and then I would, you know, be, you know, in traffic. I would, I would send my shirts out to get washed and ironed, and I ended up spending all the money I had earned that day on just going to work, eating, and, you know, going to sleep.
Yeah, and people will just, for them it's okay to borrow time to make more money. They are like, oh yeah, that's fine. You know, I want the money. So it's okay if I use my times to do more of that work. But at the end of the day, it's super stressful, and you probably might have felt some burnout and all of that. Yeah. So then when you back to your questions about travel, why are people not going to those places or prefer Hawaii or all of those? Because they want maybe they want the picture perfect vacation, and because they have so little time, it's totally fine for them to spend the money that they've earned because they want to do all of it. You know, when we went to Aruba, we didn't go jet skiing every single day. We didn't even jet ski at all, right? But if you spend like a day jet skiing on Aruba, it's probably going to cost you like, you know, 2 people a couple of $100 for just like an hour or so. So yeah, for us, it's totally the opposite. We have the time, we DIY our activities, we love hiking, we love a lot of things that cost nothing. So yeah, we need less money that way.
Yeah, I like it. So before we talk about Taiwan, I just want to really quickly go through some of these areas that a lot of nomads just haven't really explored yet. So let's kind of do a rapid, 30 seconds on each place. All right. Kind of summary of, did you like it? Would you go back? Would you recommend it for nomads? All right. So starting with San Miguel de Allende, Mexico.
Yeah. So we like it. That was one of the places we are thinking of going back. I think it's a good place for expat. The cost of living, as you say, it's not really high. It's super safe for Mexico. It's English is widely spoken. So yeah, pretty high, maybe a 4 out of 5 as a place for nomads.
And what about Aruba?
Aruba, again, if we're looking at a place, I think it's okay to go there for a month. After that, we probably might we'll get tired, so we won't stay there long term. It is more expensive, but for what you get on long term, it's pretty amazing. It's perfect weather, it's perfect beach. The only problem with Aruba is the food, which sucks. So I will give it a 3 out of 5 because we won't get back to it. And
okay. Speaking of food, France.
oh wow, yeah. So speaking of food, France is really big, though. It's but I think in general, yeah, that might be a place for us because I'm a French citizen. We might want to spend more time there long term. It can be more expensive if you go to touristy place, but again, there is a lot of non-touristy place. So I think I will give it a 4 out of 5. The only reason I'm not going to give it a 5 is because it's more for personal notes. I think for me, I love being an expat. So going back home, going back to France will be a bit odd because then I won't be seen as an expat. So yeah.
Okay, I see that. And what about Portugal, starting with Porto and then Lisbon?
So I think both of those places, I think for expat, Lisbon is pretty good. I think that can be a 5 out of 5 for expats if they want to live there because there is a co-working space. It's very nomad friendly. It is probably one of the most expensive places in Portugal. So maybe I will give it a 4.5 out of 5. I think for us, it's definitely a place we are considering as, if you want to have a base, Portugal is definitely on the list, but we will be most likely being 45 minutes away from Lisbon because you can just get like place for a fraction of the cost than Lisbon. As we call it out, you spend a lot of money there because of the accommodation.
And what about Porto?
Porto is also getting there in terms of price. It's expensive. I think we didn't really like the city itself too much, but the surrounding is amazing. Like the Douro Valley, which is the wine valley, it's amazing.
Yeah. So I
there. So everything around Porto is quite nice. It's not at Lisbon.
Yeah. So I've been to both. I really like Portugal as a whole. I think for me, the biggest issue is it's part of the Schengen zone. So I can only stay for, 90 days and then be out for 90 days. But aside from that, Portugal, I think is fantastic. So I really like it. Okay. So jumping down
and actually, so you are not aware about, I was going to say the reason we are considering Portugal is that you can easily get a resident visa. You can become a resident. It's pretty easy as long as you just need to have I think you just need to get a lease and then they can give you residence as long as you commit to stay 6 months in Portugal. And then you get tax breaks for the next 10 years. So that's something we're looking at potentially doing. Yeah,
it definitely makes sense for a lot of non-Americans. The problem with Americans getting residency is then we have to pay tax. It's more complicated for tax. It's much easier for us to just just not be a resident somewhere. All right. What about Montenegro? And I don't hear much about that place.
So it's very close to Croatia and Dubrovnik. We were initially going to go to Croatia, but then we stumbled upon it. It's a beautiful place. We stay in Kotor, which is close to the border, which has view on the bay of Kotor, which is quite nice, really affordable, nice weather as we went, which was, I think, around October. It's like Dubrovnik for a fraction of the cost. So if you haven't been yet, check it out, and then you can rent a car and explore. And it's quite safe too.
Nice. So then we have Thailand. Everybody loves Thailand. I've spent so much time there. I think people already know it's kind of a great overall nomad destination. But overall, out of all the places you've been in the last 2 years, where do you see yourself going back to, and where would you actually want to base yourselves out of?
Yes, I think the top of the list we have Portugal, Montreal, and San Miguel. But that would have been post-COVID. Now, with COVID, we have been thinking about looking at things like healthcare, governance stability. So right now, we are definitely putting Taipei on the top of the list. So it has been interesting development.
Nice. So that's kind of why you guys went to Taiwan, right? Because it's one of the few places right now where there's a way to go long term.
Oh yeah. So I checked the last numbers about the COVID cases. So for your audience, if they are not aware, there has been in total, 7 deaths in the entire country due to COVID. The number of cases has been, I think it's 640 as of this recording. And there hasn't been any local transmission. So for more than 200 days, which means that those 640-ish cases have just been residents or people that can come back, national residents that came with the virus, and they were quarantined for 2 weeks, and none of those died. So I haven't seen a country with numbers like this. And from living here, I can tell it's not like, there is no, the government is not hiding numbers, because like we are going to crowded places without masks and stuff, and we have been fine. So yeah, it is, the government has been doing quite well with the quarantine process to contain the virus.
Yeah, and Sri Lanka has been very, very similar, the last 6 months or so, where and maybe because Taiwan and Sri Lanka are very similar. They're island nations. The government can just lock everything down. Unfortunately, what happened pretty recently here in Sri Lanka was, because it's so close to India, there was some transmission from there through kind of people breaking the rules. So, for example, fishermen trading with Indian fishermen or hanging out. Maybe they're drinking together or just interacting. And then there was a case with a garment factory that had Indian workers. Possibly, it's rumors of what happened, but some say that they had some Indian workers coming kind of and skipping quarantine or something. So unfortunately, there was a breakout here, but overall, fantastic place, very similar to Taiwan in terms of there was no local transmission for months and months, and compared to the rest of the world, very it's very low cases. And I know some people listening to this, there's the two sides, right? On one side, people are saying this is the end of the world pandemic. Everybody needs to stay home, wear a mask, and and panic because it's a big deal. On the other side, people are like, no, it's not a big deal at all. Let's reopen everything. Let's kind of screw it. And as someone who's kind of always kind of moderate in the middle, I'm like, you know what? Maybe there's a chance that this is actually a lot worse than people realize. And all the kind of shutdowns has slowed things down. And maybe it could become a really, deadly pandemic. It's kind of smart for us as nomads, if we have the choice, to say, you know what? Yeah, maybe it's not that big of a deal, but why would we, stay in a place like the U.S. where it's kind of uncontrollable, when we have the option to go to somewhere like Taiwan, or stay in a place like Sri Lanka, where it's just a non-issue.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I don't know. For us, we see the pandemic, pretty much in most countries, Europe. I mean, we're looking especially at Europe and the US, because that's where our family are. And yeah, things are not really looking good. I think places like Sri Lanka or Taiwan are definitely doing much better in terms of numbers and local transmission. But again, I think it's, at the end of the day, it's personal preference, where people want to live. Because for us, we are nomads, we have the option to live anywhere. So that's how we end up with Taiwan when we left Indonesia in March because of the pandemic. Ahead of our schedule, we just look at the numbers, and Taiwan was in the top of our list. And we've got very lucky that that hasn't changed since then. But now that we've been here and we see how the government is doing towards this, we feel very confident that they are not going to reopen the border until there's a process to make sure that all of the people in Taiwan can remain safe.
Yeah, I almost think of it as, maybe like this was almost kind of like COVID is almost like a trial run, where in the future, if there really is let's say there's a super deadly pandemic, or maybe like, let's say a zombie apocalypse. And I think if this was like a trial run of how we would handle things, I think most countries would have failed so badly. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I don't, like I said, I don't know every single country, but I think most of them will have failed. And I think to Taiwan's point, because they have to deal with SARS, I think like 10, 15 years ago, they did learn from them at the time, because they got it pretty badly with the virus. So I think they acted as soon as they heard about the Wuhan incident back in December, and people starting wearing masks right away and taking precaution and putting the quarantine into effect. I mean, they have been super reactive. Just to show you how reactive they were, when we were on our flight from, I think we left March 17th from Bali to Taipei. We were not supposed to quarantine. We are not in that. If you remember, there was a list of countries, China and all of the odd countries, when everybody coming from this country must quarantine. Mm-hmm. We were not on that list, but as we went, as our flight take off, think it was at 4 p.m. They said that by 5 p.m., every single person entering Taiwan would have to quarantine. So then when we landed, they told us, hey, by the way, you guys have to quarantine. Are you okay with that? If not, then just take a different flight, stay in the airport and go somewhere else, which people did. But yeah, so they are, as they get new information, they constantly update their rules. And the situation here has been evolving as well in 2020 in terms of how to the quarantine. And so they are constantly in their policy. I don't know what's going to happen in 2020. Now there is a potential solution with a vaccine. Is that going to affect how they are the quarantine, for instance? But right now, anyone's coming only has to be residents or nationals, and they have to come.
Okay. So before we talk about how to actually get that, the residency to go there with the Taiwan Gold Card, how was the actual quarantine for you guys? What was that like?
It was pretty surreal. So, as I said, we didn't know we have to mandatory quarantine, but we are going to have a kind of a soft self-quarantine between us, just to be safe and just to be, for the people of Taiwan and just to respect the process. So we are going to do that. Now, as we arrived, it became much more formal. So they asked for our phone number upon arrival at the airport. They tried to call our phone and wanted to make sure that they can reach out to us if they needed to. And then they asked us for our address and the hotel location and told us, please do not take public transportation to go to your place. It's only basically private transportation, so taxi or Uber. At the time, Uber were allowed to do that. We got into an Uber, we got to our place, and then we stayed inside. The first day, so we were in an Airbnb, which was part of an apartment complex. And so someone was ringing the bell. So what I was doing is like, okay, I'm just going to go down the stairs. I thought it was been some food we might have delivered. Turns out it was the police officer or the local police that were checking on us. So when I opened the door, so I was wearing my mask, obviously, but when I opened the door and he was speaking English, he was asking me who I was, what I was doing. I said, oh yeah, I'm living there. I said, well, what are we doing outside? Please come back to your apartment and please do not leave the apartment. So they are very serious about that. And he was very friendly. It's not like, hey, I'm going to fine you or anything. He was just like, no, just make sure to follow the rules and stay within the apartment. Does not step through the door or step outside of the building. So that was fun.
Nice.
And then because of the SIM card, they were asking actually we were using Google Fi because it's very convenient as we travel. So they asked us to get a Taiwanese SIM card so they could track our location. And that's the way they can see people are leaving their building or anything. We've got told stories of people get stopped by the police within like half an hour of them leaving their building. They will make sure that we'll catch you.
Yeah, that's actually a very sensitive subject about the location tracking and also contact tracing. I know there's a lot of people, especially in the US, that are very upset about that, and they don't want a kind of totalitarian government tracking it. And on one hand, I agree with them. I think that the government, especially the US government, may use opportunities to kind of lock down more control, right? Taking away some liberties or rights. But on the other hand, it is the very best way to keep everyone safe if there really is a very deadly pandemic. And the problem is, I think nobody really knows how deadly COVID actually is. It seems like everything's fine. It's not that big of a deal, but maybe it's not that big of a deal because people actually took action. So who knows? But let's say there was, something that was COVID 20 or something that was way stronger. I would be happy that the government had things in place to actually make sure people were quarantined. Because here in Sri Lanka, what had happened was residents, came back and they were supposed to quarantine, but they're like, I'm home already. Let me go see my relatives, my family. I miss them. I haven't seen them in a while. And that's how things, got spread again. Yeah. So it is complicated. So I do respect that Taiwan does it in a friendly way, but they're still serious about it.
Oh, yeah, no, they're totally friendly, and they come, once a day they will check on you. I think now they just send you a text message to check because you have to take your temperature every day. So then if you do end up getting the virus from the time you reach there, then they will just take care of you. And like I said, only 7 people die overall, so they are a pretty good system to handle that. Yeah, I mean, for me, if it's the price to have to pay for the freedom we are getting now, and we will be able to get most likely next year and until the situation resumed to where it was, I am okay with it. I mean, I don't feel like, yeah, they might be tracking me now where I am with my phone. I mean, I can also switch back to Google Fi if I want, that they won't be able to track us that way. But it's, I think that saved the country twice. There was an incident when a guy went to, so not only they can track, but then they can know where everybody is going to. So I think there was an incident when the guy went to a nightclub, just again, going back home, I think he was a resident. He said, yeah, who cares? I just want to do my own thing. So then they were able to basically follow up with all of the people he was in contact with and make sure that all of those people were isolating themselves. And there was another incident when there was a naval ship coming back to Taipei, which was, that was interesting actually, because all of the people on the ship were Taiwanese. And those people, they didn't quarantine when they came back because they were going to be on a mission on their boat just by themselves. There was no way they would get the virus. So then as they come back, some people got the virus. So as they quickly identified those people, again, some of people went in grocery store and stuff. So they shut down the grocery store location as well, do a deep cleaning, to make sure that the virus is not spreading. Because when you have one of those incidents, then it's easy. Then things can get out of control. Then it can become that outbreak, and then you lost all of the effort you've done.
Yeah, so it definitely makes sense. So the last guest I had on episode 260 was Mita, and she's in Barbados, and there the quarantine is only 5 days. And I'm pretty sure that the reason why they make it so short is they kind of figured like that's the maximum amount of time a lot of Americans would be willing to quarantine, because it's just a easier process. 14 days is more on the safe side.
Yeah, and actually Taiwan is going further than that. As you quarantine, they don't want you. I mean, in such a situation, if you come with your partner, they want you to quarantine in 2 different locations. And I was wondering, like, why do you want to be separate from your partner? Because you share the same plane, blah blah blah. Yeah. It's just because if one person has COVID before the flight, and then you get it as you are that partner during the quarantine, you might still show symptoms post those 14 days, right? Because you're incubation period and stuff. So they are just taking it very seriously to the point that in that event, which should be pretty rare, but again, to be safe, there have been cases when husband and wife were separated because they couldn't find big enough space for them to be. I think you need to have the proper separate bathroom and stuff. But no, like we're planning on bringing our parents. I think they should be, unless they change the rules, as long as you give them enough space, I think should be okay. But yeah, the government is looking at those numbers as well when they define their quarantine.
That is taking it too far. I think I understand that there is a slight risk of someone developing it, after. So like, let's say someone had it and then the other person gets it on like day 11 or something. I can see that extending, but I think it's a ridiculous rule to ask people to separate from their spouse, or even their girlfriend or boyfriend, travel partner. I think
that's been causing confusion there.
Yeah. That rule I would not abide to. But so let's talk about the actual gold card, because that is kind of not the loophole, but that is the way that really pretty much anyone can apply and get into Taiwan and stay there even during the travel lockdown. How does it actually work?
Yeah, so it's first and foremost, it's an employment gold card. So the way things work in Taiwan when you want to find a job, because that was the purpose of the card initially, was like you need to get sponsored by a company in Taiwan. So you apply overseas, you go through the interview process, and then they sponsor you for that job. If you lose that job, or if you decide to change job, then you lose your resident visa because it's attached to that job. So it's the equivalent in the US with a L1, which is a visa only attached to the company. So because the government of Taiwan wants to attract people, and especially skilled foreigners, they developed that gold card. So with that gold card, when you qualify, you get a bunch of stuff. One of them is that an open work permit. So that means that you can come to the country as a resident, and then you can start to look for a job. And you don't have to need to find a job in Taiwan as well. So a lot of people have been able to take advantage of it because they were working, let's say, in the US, or they were freelancing. Then you can get the gold card. You will be eligible for it. You never have to work for a Taiwanese company, and you can stay in the country from between 1 to. So that's one of the benefits. Not only you get that open work permit, you also have the ability to enter the country as many times as you want, especially during the pandemic, because right now no foreigners are allowed. So then, as you become a resident and gold card holder, you have that ability to come in and out. And of course, you will have to go through quarantine. And then you also have the ability to get access to the national health insurance, which is a pretty good health insurance. It's a very cheap health insurance you can get as well. You can also bring your spouse and your kids. And something we're going to try to do is you can also bring your ascendant into Taiwan. So my parents and grandparents, they are eligible to get a visa. So instead of having you to go to Europe, for us, for instance, going to get back to France and be maybe in another lockdown or exposed with the virus, we can have them to come. I think it's up to 6 months per year. Right now, during the pandemic, they only are you 3 months, but I think you might be able to extend that. So that's also another benefit. And there is some income tax break as well. So those are all of the benefits you get with that card.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, I think that's really, really valuable for people with families, especially people with families that want healthcare and the kind of Taiwan healthcare. Oh, well, yeah. And school. I mean, that is for anyone in the US who is worried about, not having healthcare during these times, or, wanting to go somewhere for not just 3 months, but 1 to 3 years, and have somewhere safe they can be with their families, because I know that's very important to a lot of people. Taiwan.
I can see my on my wife's side, niece and nephews, my nieces just don't be. I mean, they are going to school is not the same experience. Summer camp, it's definitely not something you do anymore, or it's a very different experience. Here, kids are at school, they play in playgrounds, there is no social distancing. So for people with family, it's totally different experience. And we have example of friends which are actually trying to come with their family for that exact reason. It's like they just want to have normal life for now, and Taiwan still offer all of that.
So how much actually does it cost then? Because it's close to free, but it's not actually free, right?
Yeah. So for an American, and you have to decide 1 or 3 years. I think it's $250 for 1 year and $300 for 3 years.
That's so cheap. So $300 for 3 years, not $300 per month, but $300 for $100 per year, basically. If you pay, that's insanely cheap.
Yeah. It's even cheaper for as you apply as a French citizen. I think it was like around $200. American pay still a bit more, but again, for that price tag, it's not even paying for the. I think what I was going to. I was thinking like the COVID test and stuff. Because there was a things like if you apply for the visa, you are not eligible to some of our. We have a bunch of friends that we share that information with and that are considering coming. And I was saying to one of them, just apply for both people instead of having you and then going through the spouse application. Because if you want your spouse to apply to become your dependent, you have to do more process in the US. And some of that is having to go through health screening test and all of that. And because that is so expensive, you're probably going to spend more than $300 just to do the health screening for that partner than just having her to get her gold card as well, or him to get a gold card as well. So yeah, it's definitely pretty.
Okay. And so if anyone's not aware of kind of the Taiwan healthcare, it's very good. My cousin is from Taiwan. My parents are both born in Taiwan. My cousin was living there for a long time still. And it basically covers everything. It even covers lots of preventative care, covers dental. I think the only thing it doesn't cover are glasses, but overall it's a very good system.
I have so one thing to note is that you get access to the healthcare, but if you work for a Taiwan company, you can apply on the day you arrive. If you don't, you have to wait 6 months, and then you just pay out of pocket. I think so. For us, we still have a few more months to wait. I think it's less than 800 NT, which will be less than 25. It's about $26 per month and per person. And as you said, I think going to the doctor will cost you like $2 or $3. I went to see a dermatologist without the healthcare, and I ended up paying 600 NTD to see that physician. So even if you don't have the healthcare, you are still, going to spend way less than paying out of pocket for the same thing in the US.
Yeah. So that's like $20 to to go to the dermatologist. So yeah, so fantastic.
Yeah.
So I know that for certain categories, the gold card is really hard to get. So for example, if you want to go as, like an athlete or something, you have to kind of prove that you're, a superstar, right? Or if you want to go as a scientist, you have to, you have to have your work peer reviewed by Taiwanese scientists, and they have to accept you in. But in your guide that you've written as a mega blog post on Nomad Numbers, there's an easier category where it's just money based, and you don't have to actually prove any like skills as
and I think
as an expert.
I think that's where some people were a bit. We were turned off initially when we read about the gold card, because I think they feature one of the co-founder of YouTube, and I forgot his name, as the first person to receive the gold card. So I was looking at my wife. I say, well, we don't have that entrepreneurial pedigree to apply. But then when you look into the details for most of those, because they want really definitely highly skilled workers for all of those categories. So there is like architecture, design, cultural arts, education, finance, law, science and technology, and sports. It's really difficult because, as you said, you have to provide a lot of proof, and even people that were skilled in those categories got a lot of trouble. So what a lot of people have been doing now is like, instead of doing that, you can apply under economy, and the only requirement in economy that you have to prove is income-based, which is much easier.
And what is the income amount? Do you know?
Yeah, so it's 160,000 per month, which the equivalent is 65 USD per year, plus or minus the conversion rate. So so as long as you make more than 65 as a W2, you can prove that your W2 is above that. Then that's all the information they need for review.
And is that combined? So can you make 30,000 and your wife makes 35,000 to kind of cover that 65,000?
It's per person.
Okay.
To apply.
Okay. And if someone was going to be a dependent, so let's say there's only one person, working, they make 65,000, but their wife or kids apply as a dependent. Is that okay?
Yeah. Like I said, you can bring your spouse and your kids. You just have to go through the process. So you have to file more paperwork and stuff. And that's what I was saying earlier. Because of COVID, I think the process is like you have to go to an office. You have to do a health screening. You just have to do much more thing. If both qualify, I think just better for both of them to submit the paperwork. If they don't, it's just keep in mind it's going to take a couple of months because you have to do more testing paperwork there. And some of those offices are usually backlogged because a lot of people are actually more and more interested by those kind of visa. So just a bit more time consuming. But yeah, it's totally doable. Okay.
And do you know if there's a way to prove, instead of income, proving like net worth or anything? Is there another way to get in, or does it have to be like a W-2 income, or maybe can it be a 1099 income?
Yeah, it's not based on your nest egg or your net worth for the gold card. I don't know for sure about other visa in Taiwan, but no, they just want to know how much income you are making, because again, they want you to come here, like they want you to bring your skill set. So if you work in economy, for them the proof was like, making sure that you are bringing enough money. But there is no, I'm not aware of people showing them this is how much I have in the bank and can I get the visa. Definitely not the gold card.
Okay. And do you know if I'm looking at TaiwanGoldCard.com right now for their FAQ, and it's a bit confusing. So I'm glad you wrote that guide. But what if, so they actually have a category. It's actually cool that they wrote this. One of the FAQs is, I'm a digital nomad / remote worker. Is this card suitable for me? Can I be self-employed? And it says, yes, this card is perfect for you. Since it contains an open work permit, you can work for any employer. However, you don't need a Taiwanese employer. So I guess my question then is does it have to be a W-2 income? I guess it can also be 1099 then, because if it's saying that if you're self-employed, it's fine.
Yeah. I don't know. I use W-2, so I cannot speak on the 1099, but there is a forum that I link on the post as well, which has a lot of people that have been going through the process, so they can help. But in general, what happens when you submit the information, if they want more information, they are not going to cancel your application. They will just friendlily asking you, hey, can I have more information on this? You might want to, check on the forum. I don't have the specific answer on that one, so I don't want to mislead by saying it's possible or not on the 1090.
Yeah, from the FAQ on the official site, it looks like it'll be fine.
It should be, because we have people, we've met people here which are freelancing and they have their own company. So, but the other thing is that you can look back 3 years back. So maybe if people have made that income before becoming freelancer, again, I'm not going to commit on that one. I just know that, we have freelancer here that came under the terms that you mentioned from the FAQ, and the W2 will definitely.
Okay. So are both you and your wife both making more than $65,000 a year then, if you applied separately?
Yes.
Well, good job, guys. Could we ask what's your work?
Well, so actually, before we became Nomad, so we provided our 2018. So at that time, we still have a regular job in the US. So that was working. Now that we are traveling, our income is definitely much lower than that. So we'll not have been able to qualify on our 2019 W2. Because we don't have any W2 in 2019.
So that's kind of a loophole, is if you guys had any of those years, the last few years, qualify, you can make it still.
If people are, right now, if people are like planning on becoming nomad or losing their job, I think it might be a good, I guess that give them 2 more years before deciding if they want to apply. And then they can have the option, I think, because you can only apply once. So it might not be worse in a situation. Let's say, you are thinking of, if you want the visa, but they are not ready to commit to Taiwan, keep in mind that you still have 2 more years from the time of your last job to be able to qualify under the economy. And we did actually apply as unemployed. So it's definitely, that was not a problem for them.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So some people might be thinking like, come on guys, $65,000 a year, that's a lot of money. But here's the thing is 2 caveats on that. And there's one, if you're working a IT job especially, but really most salary jobs in the US, before taxes, $65,000. It seems like a lot, but it's only $5,400 a month. There's plenty of people who are kind of new nomads or remote workers who qualify. Second, as a self-employed entrepreneur, being something like a e-commerce business owner, like for me when I was dropshipping, my tax form, my 1099, would show that I had earned $250,000 that year. My actual take-home net profit was less, way less than half of that. It's maybe a third of that. But on paper, it made it look like I was earning over $200,000 a year. So chances are, at least from the way I read it, is you can show that and say, hey, look, I made well over $100,000 last year. So that might be a way to get around it as well.
Yeah, and actually, I did some research. There is that website that I'm also linking on the blog, which is called TaiwanGoldCard.com, which actually a website that people here are building as they got the gold card, because they also realize that things are pretty tricky. There is a section about those my professional services, sole proprietor, dividend income count towards the salary requirement. Mm-hmm. They say generally not, but it depends. And I think the key is that you can make an argument if your freelance income looks a lot like salary. For instance, in the USA, I think the form like 7 unemployment compensation or 1099 NEC from after 2020. So there might be a way for that to count.
I like it. And to kind of close off that thought, there's some nomads right now listening. Maybe they even shut down. Turned off the podcast now and they're angry. They're like, Johnny, guys, like this is so rude. Most nomads are only making $1,000 a month. Like this is not even possible. Why did you waste our time with that? I want you guys to realize that that was kind of chapter 1 of the digital nomad life, where, skating around and living off of $600 or $1,000 a month and just making that amount was fun. It was a part of kind of digital nomad 1.0. But if that was kind of the lifetime dream, I think we were selling ourselves short, because there's so much more potential as nomads to earn, $65,000 a year or more and have a normal kind of Western income while still traveling, living remotely, and then keeping our expenses down. So a lot of that could have just went to savings, and a lot of that ended up, could have been things like dividend income, where maybe I'm wondering, and this isn't verified or not, but let's say you've saved up enough money where your investments are now making you $65,000 a year. There's a very good chance that Taiwan and other countries might accept that. Who knows, right? But if you can prove, really what they want to know is, are you going to come and add value to our economy and our culture and our country, or are you going to be taking from it? And I think too many so-called nomads have been, skating by as more like backpackers than actual entrepreneurs and nomads. And this is kind of a big wake-up call, is countries will always accept people and want people who are adding value to their country. And people are not going to want to support the leechers. Thailand is moving towards that as well, where they no longer want the backpackers or kind of the low budget travelers. They want to attract people who are actually earning money. So it sucks, but this has been a big wake up call for a lot of people, is if you had, done what everyone has kind of shown is possible the last couple of years, you wouldn't be in a situation now. You would have, be able to prove, hey, I have the savings or I have the income from the last few years to be able to support myself in a place like Taiwan. And that's a benefit and a kind of reward for doing that.
Yeah, and keep in mind, if people doesn't have the salary requirements, if they exceed or if they excel into their field, all of the other fields I've mentioned, like science and technology, if you have a top-notch person, you can still get it as well. Because first and foremost, like you said, they want talents to come to Taiwan. And they are totally fine if you don't work for Taiwanese company. They just want you to come here to get to experience the country, to provide some level of contribution during the time you are in Taiwan. And then, they will give you those amazing benefits. But keep in mind that economy is the easiest way. If some of your audience are like, top-notch in those other profession that we've mentioned, they still have the way to apply and get there. But you just need to excel there.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because I'm even looking at a category called culture and arts, where you can be in performing arts, visual arts, publishing, broadcast, music, handicraft, even, cultural administration. So there are a lot of categories that if you do excel in those categories, as in you are very good at your job, then you can get in. So that's another reason to be good at what you do. So it's been really fun talking and kind of catching up. Overall, what are your impressions of living in Taiwan? Do you like the people? Do you like, the culture, the infrastructure, the Wi-Fi? How is it?
Yeah, I mean, we like pretty much everything. I think the things to watch out for us was the weather, because the summer can be super hot and humid. So it can feel very hot, but we have ACs and, we have access to the beach. So we did a bunch of river tracing so you can get in the water when it's hot. But the food is amazing. The infrastructure, it's like Japan for a fraction of the cost. We never rented a car. You can get public transportation. They have top-notch subway. They have city bikes you can rent for like $1 per hour or less, just to move within Taipei. There's so many hikes. I think there is 300 summits, 300 peaks, so you can hike. We've been hiking for months and we haven't done the same trail so far. The people are wonderful. I mentioned immigration and they've been super helpful and supporting us as we went through the process during the pandemic. The people are really nice. The language, I'm finally starting to take some Mandarin class, but in Taipei, you can totally get by if you speak English. Once you get outside of Taipei, then it's a bit difficult. But I'm starting to learn Chinese, so that's fun. Overall, like I said, 5 out of 5, especially regarding the current pandemic about Taiwan. I think they're doing everything right. It's pretty, the healthcare is good. Cost of living is totally affordable. Yeah. Enjoying it.
I'm a bit biased because my parents are both from Taiwan, and I used to visit a lot as a kid, and I've been a few times to visit last couple of summers, but I've been to 50 countries now, and Taiwan is definitely on the top 10 of places to go, especially for food. The night markets, which I'm sure you go to a lot, they're amazing. Definitely the best food of any night market in the world. I like the ones in
Yeah,
Chiang Mai, but the one in Taiwan's way better.
it's super clean also as well, which sometimes when you go to those night market, like you mentioned, Chiang Mai, it's like, oh, I'm not going to look too closely, but I mean, you are usually fine, but it's, here things are super clean, it's tasty. Like I said, like we said at the beginning, I didn't know anything about Taiwan, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't probably have the same statement about the country. And once you get there, I mean, there is nothing outstanding for sure. You cannot say about Taiwan. Maybe the Taroko National Park, which is one thing, which is a beautiful park, but there is not like something at top of the list. But everything is it's really good. You have amazing bike path you can go biking with. You have amazing transportation. So everything is really, really good. It's that there is nothing outstanding. That's maybe why it's not on the list of most.
Yeah, and there's definitely not any like standout Instagram, made places. Bali, for example, is probably the exact opposite of Taiwan. I mean, they're both islands, but Bali is made for Instagram. But once you actually get there and you realize, hey, the infrastructure sucks. There's no public transport. The Uber doesn't work there. There's scams everywhere. Like the ATMs will rob you. Like people break into your house and rob your villa. Like the internet sucks. But it's so beautiful that people go. Taiwan's the opposite.
Yeah, I will challenge. You should check. We have a very small YouTube channel, but I have video. I did that bike trip. And you can just check those videos and you can ask yourself whether or not you're in Taiwan or in Ubud, because there is rice paddy field here. And seriously, like you can do side-by-side comparison on the pictures. They are really good they are getting into that Instagram fashion here. A lot of people love that. I think it's getting better. I think it's not very well known. And safety-wise, people, how many times you rent a bike and, in those bikes, you have a caddy in front. I left my bag. I went back home and I forgot my bag for some reason. I came back, it was still there. Or people will leave their wallet at the coffee shop or their laptop and things are still there. It's so much safer. Like it's a different world.
Yeah. Taiwan's probably one of the safest countries in the world. It's very similar to Japan culturally in many, many ways. And, it's kind of a mix of what China used to be before 1950, I guess, before communism. And so you have the old Chinese history, and then you have the Japanese influence, because when Taiwan kind of broke off, basically, they decided, screw mainland China, let's follow a different culture. And for whatever reason, they chose Japan. So there's, a lot of Japanese restaurants, a lot of Japanese influence. People are really polite and quiet and clean. It's almost kind of a strange mix between Japan and kind of old China.
And that's why when you ask me the question what I think about Taiwan, I always like to balance. I don't want to be biased. And the only thing that really sucks is the weather. Like, so if I came up to say that the weather, like, I cannot think about any. And again, when I'm saying it sucks, it's not really that bad. It's like Chiang Mai weather, right? But everything else I cannot think about sucks.
Yeah. So I encourage people to check it out, whether it's moving there, now with the gold card, or to have it as a place to think about in the future. But I've always said for the last 5 years, this has potential as a nomad hotspot. There's just no nomads there. So I'm glad that you and Mrs. Nomad Numbers is kind of putting it on the map. If people want to check out your blog, we'll have links to the Taiwan Employment Gold Card application guide that you wrote, super detailed, as well as all of your, expenses breakdowns kind of throughout the last couple of years. It's nomadnumbers.com. Is there any other way to reach you on like social media or anything?
No, I think the best way is just if people want to reach us, they can get into our newsletter when we set an update once a week, and that they can reply to those emails so they have direct access. Perfect.
And big question that people want to know is Mr. Nomad and Mr. and Mrs. Nomad Numbers. I guess you guys are anonymous because you guys are so transparent with all your numbers and everything. How's that worked out for you guys? Have you ever been like kind of recognized anywhere, or what do your parents think about this?
No, we are not that popular yet. I think we started only 2 years ago, so we haven't been to the same place twice. We will see. But we do have a lot of people though that, like you, similar to you, love the transparency, and we connect with them through the blog, and then we meet them in person later on. That's also one of the reasons I wanted to start the blog, is like we also want to find our community, and as you know, community is a a big topic as you are a long-term nomad. So yeah, the blog has been that nice vehicle for us to connect with those like-minded people.
All right. Very cool. Well, enjoy Taiwan. Please have some delicious Taiwanese food for me because I do miss it. Enjoy the night markets. I'm assuming, are they open now? Is it kind of life normal there?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, like I said, they are having concert. I think last month there was a big concert happening outside and like big crowds and stuff. Life is totally normal. The only thing is like you have to wear a mask in public transportation. And now as the flu season is coming back, they want again people to wear masks indoor. But I think that's the most of starting December 1st. I think when you go to businesses and grocery stores, everybody will have to put their mask on. But that's the extent of the precaution with the pandemic here.
Okay.
Not too bad.
Awesome. Well, great chatting with you. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll have links to everything in the show notes. This is episode 261 at the Travel Like a Boss podcast. And see you guys all next week. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Travel Like a Boss podcast. If you want to hear more, including the bonus How to Choose the Perfect Niche episode, join our mailing list at travellikeabosspodcast.com. See you next week, and remember, if you want to travel like a boss, you need to be your own boss. So start your online business today and start living the lifestyle you've always dreamed of.